Hello everyone, welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. My name is Kent Trammell, and I know we have someone here it's their first time. Karen, welcome. If anyone else is new, this live stream is a great place to, one of the best parts of it is to ask questions as we go, which you don't get with pre-recorded tutorials, in that I can answer them fairly quickly and in real time. And so do that with two brackets and a Q, the letter Q in between those brackets. And that will add the tag question to your comment. And that makes it very easy for me to spot in the chat. So let me know if everything's good, like audio is good, video is good. But it looks like it is on my end. So yeah, we'll continue on. But yeah, welcome. Today we're going to be starting a new project in Blender that's summer themed, at least I have to remind myself. I talk to Wayne, fairly often, Wayne Dixon in Australia, and it's opposite seasons for him. So I assume the whole world thinks of summer as, bright sunny beaches and hot weather. But for him, it's the exact opposite. But hopefully, wherever you are, this resonates with your summer season. And yeah, so this is the project. We've got this tropical scene. We've got one of our characters, Melvin, kind of. I guess the theme I came up with for him was he came to surf. And yet it is a calm day, so he's just sitting there waiting peacefully. But yeah, I think it's a fun image. It's certainly a fun creation process. It's a very appealing aesthetic. It's simple geometry. We're approximating a lot of detail. And it just ends up being a fun creation process compared to like realism, for example, where there's often a lot of pressure and a lot of super fine details to keep track of. With this sort of style, we can create it fairly quickly by comparison. And so I'm hoping to do this in about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks of streams where we about 2-hour, streams every week, once a week. So yeah, that's the format for this project. I see one question from Zach. When I try to link things in 2.8, it will not let me pick files from my secondary drive. Is this a bug or just because it's still in beta? That's interesting because your secondary drive, that almost sounds like an operating system issue more than a Blender thing. I'm going to be linking. That's going to be a big part of this project, is linking in our assets. So I'm going to be going over that, and I have yet to experience any issues. So when that comes about, if maybe we'll cover that once we get there. I don't know if it'll be this week, but probably next maybe is when we start linking stuff in, if not the third week. The way I'm going to approach this is by creating a bunch of assets first, like the palm tree, a bush, a little fern plant, a rock. I'm going to be creating those things individually, and then later we will assemble those in a complete blend file. So that won't be soon, but it will happen. Question from Miranda: do I need to dig up my tablet today, or are we in sculpt free zone? I'm not going to be sculpting. I might sculpt a rock, actually. If I have time, I'm going to start with a palm tree and then do a bush and then maybe get to sculpting. But I will be using my tablet for painting a little bit of texture. So yeah, you might want to grab it if you want to follow along. Excellent. So where this project was inspired is I've been doing a freelance project on the side with Wayne, actually. And I've been creating a lot of these environments, simplistic environments like a mountain lake, a mountain valley with a bunch of trees. It's just been a very fun aesthetic that has taught me some things specifically about like rendering with Eevee, rendering large scenes with Eevee. I feel like a lot of people, or a lot of Eevee renders are like single objects that focus on just the object, and whether it's a portrait or whether it's a car or just a singular, what am I trying to say? Product rendering kind of thing. Whereas I don't see a lot of it being used for like open environments. So that's kind of fun to explore. Before we actually get started, I'm going to try to create exactly this scene right here. And if I orbit around, you can see that it actually looks pretty goofy whenever you're not looking through the camera. So we're going to be focusing on the camera angle specifically and saving ourselves work by only making it look good in camera. But I am going to try and create exactly this. However, before starting a project like this, whatever kind of environment you're going to create, you got to look up reference. You got to start framing your mind to understand what you're creating. And I'm going to do that real quickly just to kind of show you what my process is. A lot of you have already seen this before, but I love unsplash.com. It's CC0 public domain images that are really, really nice, high quality photography, type imagery. So if we look up just the word beach, this is going to give us all the information that we need, from what the sky looks like to what the surf looks like at a, kind of stereotypical tropical environment. So this is perfect for an above view of what our surf will be, the shore of the ocean mixed with the sand. That's going to be an excellent source of reference. We're going to approximate the white foam. But for now, I'm going to focus on some vegetation specifically. So here we've got a great photo of a couple palm trees, and here's where I'm going to make mental notes about the parts of the tree, like the trunk, obviously, the branches, the branch like middle part, along with the branch leaves, I guess that's what that's called on a palm tree. There's also this part at the top that's like where the branches grow out of. It's this like round cluster. So I'm going to start collecting this information in my head, making mental notes. But then also I need to think about the jungle portion as a whole. So let's see if we can scroll down and find a better example. Perfect. Here we go. So here we've got a picture of the ocean, the sand, and the jungle itself. And the jungle, if you've ever tried to create a jungle, it can be extremely complex. There's just a lot of parts that you have to create in order to accomplish the feeling of a jungle. But we want to boil that down to the absolute essential parts. So in this case, in my research and development, I came up with a palm tree. We need a palm tree that we can duplicate around. So this, for the sake of duplication, I need to have a couple variants of that palm tree so that they all don't look completely duplicated. I also need some bushes, some small vegetation like a fern. Right here is a good example pictured in the left of the frame. Just a small leafy, kind of bush. But then there's also a ton of leafy vegetation that is not as clear cut as the palm tree. So more generic type bushes that can be scaled large or scaled small, and then fill up the majority of the empty space between palm trees, between bushes, and between rocks. So there's going to be, I think that's 4 things. Yeah, rocks is another thing. I do want to add some rocky parts. But yeah, so that's kind of breaking down the image to its simplest parts. And that's what we're going to be creating today. I'm going to start with a palm tree, try and create a bush, and then the variants, and then also a rock is the goal. See if I missed any questions. No. Excellent. All right. Don't hesitate to ask. Let's get started. So I am going to open a fresh Blender scene. File, new, general. And the first thing I think I'll do is create the file structure. Since this is not a typical scene where we're just going to create everything in one blend file, we're going to use this library type system. So I am going to, let's see, I'm going to save my scene, but really just to open the file browser. Pretty sure I clicked save as. That would be a kind of weird thing to crash on. All right. Okay, excellent. Guys, I'm sorry about that. That's been a first. I've never seen Blender crash on the open menu or whatever it was. But you'll see that I have Blender open now. It looks like the menu's working. So we'll continue on then. Right, so what I wanted to do is save the file first and show you how we can organize the file structure. So file, I'm going to save as. Now I am going up. All right, so I've got 2 folders here, and this is just for me teaching. I've got the R&D folder, which is the project folder that I researched, and now this is the recorded version. So in R&D, we have a library and an assembly folder. So I'm going to create those in our record directory. So hit the new button and new folder and assemblies, plural, because we can, this process is great for making multiple scenes from the same library. And then another folder called lib for library. Yes, Omar, the freelance job has been done in Eevee up to this point. It consists of several videos, and the first one we did with Eevee, we're starting to actually, we might rethink that for the second ones, because there's some some animation artifacts with like ambient occlusion and screen space reflections that can sometimes be annoying to work with, but that's still, it worked pretty good other than that. And anyway, we have rendered it in Eevee. All green, excellent. And so yeah, I've created the assemblies and lib directory. Assemblies is where we're going to save assembled versions of our files, and that's going to come later. Right now we're focusing on the library. Now within the library, I'm going to create 3 folders. All right, the first one is going to be char for character. This is where character library files will live. I'm going to create another one called props. This is our trees, our rocks, our bushes. They will live in here. And then one more folder for text, which is all the textures that we create will be found in the single directory. All right, so this is kind of standard organization for this type of library linking project structure. And I mean standard, like everyone maybe has their own naming convention, but ballpark, this is pretty common. Now we are creating props. So we're going to go into props, and for each prop, I'm going to create another folder. So this is palm tree. Okay, and within palm tree, we're going to have one master palm tree file, but we're going to work on versions, you know, which is common practice to save iteratively, to save iterations. And so I'm going to create another folder called versions, or just VER perhaps. So in here, we'll start, finally, that was several folders to create, but we're going to start with palm tree underscore 01. Excellent. All right, so now we've established our folder structure, and the whole project will be organized as a result. So for the palm tree, I'm going to get rid of everything in our scene. I'm going to just start fresh, and we're going to begin with I'm just going to start with a circle, because we're going to start with the trunk of the palm tree, and that's going to consist of a circle. I like to start that way. Now I'm going to hit Shift A to bring up the add menu, and obviously circle. Now for the vertex count, I'm going to go down to, I'm thinking 12. So right now we're kind of establishing like what the poly count is going to, be for our assets, and it is low poly, but it's not exactly game resolution, because I will model it to be able to accept a subdivision surface modifier if needed. So it's going to be all quad geometry. So it's kind of in the middle, but I can easily turn subdivision off for low poly stuff in the distance, or I can turn it on for a little bit smoother of an effect. But in general, it's low detail, low poly count. So that's what the 12 vertices will give me. Tab into edit mode, and we can start extruding this thing up. So EZ, and I'm going to create the first palm tree. Shrink it a little bit at the top. The first palm tree is going to be straight up and down, and then from there I'll create variants just to manipulate them and curve the trunks and tilt them a little bit, shrink them, stuff like that. So yeah, the way we model this is start big at the trunk. We're going to then shrink it at the top, and I'm going to create these segments along the length. So I'm going to cut with Control R. Also, I should probably enable screencast keys for your convenience. There we go. Yeah, that'll be fine. And Control R, scroll my mouse wheel up, and we're just going to pick a ballpark like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments. I think will be fine. And this is how we're going to create the segmentation result. But first, I do want to give it a little bit of a curve, because the straight trunk right now is not very believable. It's not very appealing. So we want to start scaling some of these differently. All right. And then at the top, it is going to kind of splay out a bit. And I'm going to get there in just a second. But you can see as we look down the length, we've got this extended, wine bottle type shape. All right, that's going to represent our palm trees quite well. I might actually cut another edge there and scale down. Though if I think of the red line, the x-axis, as a as a grid, as a ground plane, I might move this down. All right, so that way, whenever we place the tree, it will automatically be placed under the surface, and we won't risk any gaps. Maybe just smooth this out a little bit more. It's a little too low poly for me. All right, so we've got this extended wine glass shape. Now we can start cutting some segments. Now, what's going to be a good way to do that? I'm thinking I will bevel each one. Control B, bevel, and maybe scale every other one down. Using the, let's see, can I do this with, I'll just scale Shift Z, so it only scales in the Z axis. No, it scales in every other axis except Z. And then I don't want it to be completely uniform, like all of these actions, so I do want to go in and maybe offset a few of them manually. Maybe make this one a little bit skinnier on the inside. Maybe make some of them a little bit plumper. And yeah, we're just creating the segmentation in general. Also, it's so evenly spaced right now, we can mess that up, make it imperfect. Imperfect is a big part of making things believable. So just drag a few of these down. Maybe rotate them too, continuing on with that imperfect kind of aesthetic. There we go. Yeah, I don't want any straight lines, really. Awesome. How's this look? In object mode, I will right-click and choose Shade Smooth. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty good for a trunk. Now the top, at least for now, you know, we can come back and alter things later. For the top, I'm going to create a sort of triangular pattern, like serrated edge at the top. And that's going to then house that, I don't know the terminology exactly, but the like chunk at the top, the round bit where the branches grow out of. So this serrated edge is going to achieve that for us. Now, how did I best do this? I found some interesting, I'll just select every other one. I won't make this complex. I'm going to select every other edge and hit E to extrude and bring it up. And then I'm going to scale using individual origins, scale and hit 0. Hit S and then, whoops, S and 0. All right. Now do the same thing for our other edges. E, move it up, S0, there we go. And then I can select, in vertex mode, I'm just going to select all of these verts, go to vertex, merge vertices by distance. And you'll see it says remove 12 vertices. That means because we scaled to 0, there were 2 verts on top of each other. And now they're not, they're combined into one. Excellent. Now, this is too consistent, so let's just select random serrated edges, serrated verts, and then kind of move some lower, some higher. I also need to splay them out. All right, now select all of them, not these bottom ones, and we can scale from the median point. All right, so we give them a bit of a splay. Is that the right word? Yeah, a spread. Excellent. Now it might be a little too like harsh of a transition. Like this line right here is very harsh. So I want to smooth that out a bit more. So cutting a new edge in there. There we go, making it a little more smooth. All right, pretty simple modeling in general. Nothing complex yet. I might bring this down so that the segmentation is a little more uneven. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier just to see how this is holding up as a smooth object. I'm gonna hit Control, hold Control, and hit 2 on the number pad, or not the number pad, I'm sorry, the 2 above your letter keys. That's going to add a subdivision surface modifier for us. And the segmentation definitely smooths out. So am I okay with that? I might be okay with that. Maybe that's not that big of a deal. Again, how close are we going to be to these palm trees? Not that close. But I don't think I like how rounded this stuff became. So hit Control 0 to turn off that subdivision surface modifier. And what am I going to do? What's a quick way? What if I bevel these? Kind of going off script here. I think I was fine leaving it the way it was when I rehearsed. Control, let me try beveling this, see what it does. And I need to open the options and choose vertex only. That's not really what I want, is it? What'll that do for smoothing? It's bad geometry, but maybe we can be okay with that. I think I'm just making this too complex at last. I mean, we really could just pull it much further out. And am I even going to see it smooth? I'm not sure that I will. Yeah. I'm just going to ignore the subdivision surface modifier for now. If I really want it later, I can address that. But I want to keep this simple. You know, I really want to keep it simple, and ignoring the subdivision surface will be an act of keeping it simpler. All right, next, I need to add a little bit of thickness to this serrated edge. So I'm going to select all of these verts. I guess it doesn't matter if it's those verts. I'm going to select any part of any like edge loop that has 12 verts. Shift D to duplicate it, scale it down a bit. And then I'm going to, is this the best way to do this? I don't think it is. Let's see if I can do this a little bit quicker. I'm trying to give it some thickness, but I think I just did it a less optimal way. I'm going to select all of these, not that bottom edge. Shift D to duplicate, and then scale that. All right. Now I'm going to fill the space that we created to generate the thickness. And I thought that was going to, there we go. All right, so just holding or hitting F, making sure my mouse is in a like near the direction that I want to fill. All right, so we've got all that filled, but they're bad. It's the normals are reversed, right? You can see that artifact happening in the shading. Oh, that's a good idea, Jake. Make a vertex group and exclude it for the subdivision surface. That's a good option too. Yeah, I wonder if subdivision will come up in the research that I did, like the R&D version. I did not use subdivision, but there were a couple spots where I saw like really harsh angles that I might have wanted to. So yeah, I'm curious if I will want to do that by the end. You'll see that my process is not, it's going to be evolving, right? Like I haven't rehearsed this to the T every single step. So I'm going to be trying things, see if it works, and then either going with it or changing approach. That's very much a part of the computer graphics creation process, problem solving, trying things, seeing what works and what doesn't. One more question from number 9. You can also press Shift Control B for vertex only bevel. I did not know that. Shift Control B. Shift Control B. Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. I've always just turned it on in the options. Thank you. What was I doing? All right, yeah, so we've got this thickness built up now. I need to select everything and hit Shift N, which will recalculate our normals. It looks like this thing's getting in the way of the screencast keys. What if I move the screencast keys to the right? Let's try that. Try to keep that out of your way so you can see those. All right, now that I've got some thickness, I can E to extrude this interior edge and then I just need to fill it. So with 12 verts, I should be able to use grid fill. Note that I have my spacebar key mapped to the tool search, which is how it was in 2.7x. So spacebar for me, and what was that doing? Fill. Yeah, look up fill and grid fill. It's going to be the cleanest type of fill. Excellent. Maybe smooth that out. Vertex, smooth vertices. And then Shift R to repeat that. All right, so now I've got this nice bowl, which will accept the round cluster that's going to go in here soon. Now, what I might want to do, let me see here. I might want to, slide these verts like this. That way I've got a sharper point on the serrated edge. And then with those verts on top of each other, again, I will just select all those and merge vertices by distance. Excellent. I think that all of these are completely consistent in that they're all in a straight line. I'm going to try to avoid that. So I'm going to select a few of them, bring them down, maybe bring a couple up. Again, like making this imperfect. I was going to say deperfectionist. Make up a weird word. All right. That's looking a little more natural. The more imperfect it looks, the more natural and organic it looks. Excellent. So that, I think, basically concludes the trunk as far as modeling. Next, let's add a mesh cube. I'm going to hit Control-2. Is that what I'm going to do? No, that's not what I'm going to do. Thinking through that again, it's not what I want to do. Shift-A, let's instead add a UV sphere, because that's going to be better. Whoops, I accidentally moved it. I didn't want to move it before I changed the resolution of that sphere. Let's try it again. Mesh UV sphere. Let's think about how much we want. I'm going to make the segments match, so 12. Is that right? Yeah, 12 segments. And then for rings, whoops, I'm going the wrong direction. I think about 7. Let's go with 8. There we go. All right, I'm going to move this to the top now. Tab into edit mode. Scale it in Z. All right, this is going to be that cluster from which all of the branches grow out of. All right, so this looks good. Is it too big? No, I feel like I need to increase the size of the serrated edge. Let's see here. Holding Control and connecting the shortest path of vertices to kind of make my way around that. Loop select won't work because of the triangles. So now that I've selected that, I'm going to hit Control plus to grow that selection. But I didn't want these. Shift select to unselect these, to deselect that interior ring. Okay, now I can either just regular scale or Alt S. I think that's what I'll do. So let's leave local view, Alt S. Maybe scale actually. Okay, that's what I want. S, Shift, Z. Scale in everything but Z. All right, now it's got a little bit more depth. It makes more sense. Can maybe use the proportional editing with the fall off set to random. For which part? I mean, yeah, that's definitely useful. I don't think that's exactly what I want in this situation. Because I don't quite yet want random verts. Oh, maybe you're talking about this. I think you're talking about the serrated edge. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So with the cluster up here, I want to do a similar type of segmentation, although still a little bit different. There's going to be a serrated edge nature to it. So I'm going to select every other. Now there is a way to select every other. How do I do that? It's called checker select. Okay, I think I've forgotten how to do this already, but select an edge. So alt click to select an edge loop, vertex, or is it select actually? Checker deselect. Yeah, so this will select every other vert, which is actually really useful in this scenario because then I can slide these up and I get this serrated pattern. But let's see here. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. And then repeat the process. Select, checker, deselect. And that actually does the opposite pattern, which is kind of cool. Select, checker, deselect. Okay, that one did the same. Must be based on the active element. Checker, deselect, yeah. Oh, sorry, I missed that, number 9. Yeah, checker deselect. Are you the one that first told me about it? Someone told me about it recently. Might have been in a stream chat. But yeah, I love checker deselect. All right, there we go. Now for these, it's still quad geometry, so I can, cut a new edge loop and do the same sort of thing that we did below. Alt S. All right, so now we're getting that type of pattern. Let's shade smooth in object mode. Excellent, that's gonna look good. All right, cool. Now, what about, I think I need to make certain edges hard. All right, so if I tab into edit mode on the trunk, I think these edges would do best if they're hardened. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to select these and then right click and choose mark as sharp. All right, now back to object mode. In our object data, in the normal section, let's enable auto smooth and the angle all the way up to 180. All right, now this segmentation appears a little more clearly. I like the way that looks. I want to do the same thing up here. Yeah, I think that's it. Control E. Also, you can either right click or Control E. Mark sharp. Enable auto smooth. Angle all the way up to 180. So putting the angle up to 180 sets all the faces to be smooth, all the edges to be smooth, except the ones that we have set to be sharp. All right, so that's kind of the low poly cluster. Now we're ready to move on to modeling the limbs and the leaves. See if I missed any questions. Don't think so. Excellent. Oh, Jonathan used the checker deselect in his modeling a sports car. Wow, that was an old course. Yeah, I didn't know about that until recently. That's the thing about Blender. There's so many Easter eggs, so many tiny tools like hidden around in all the corners. I don't think I'll ever know all of them. But yeah, if you guys ever see me like doing something that a tool could do much easier, just let me know because I learn a lot from you guys. All right, so those limbs, how are we going to start those? I think I'll also start with, let's just start with a cylinder. And since these are going to be very thin branches that we're creating like the spine of the branch, we don't need very many verts. So I'm going to leave that as like 6 count vertices. And then for the radius, it can be a lot skinnier. Let's make it taller. Is that the depth? Yeah, okay, depth. And then, do we not have control? Oh, so I don't have control of how many cuts we have vertically. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to move that to the top and actually move jump into edit mode and move all the components so that the origin, that orange dot, is closer to the end. All right, so the same, similar modeling situation as the trunk. I'm going to select the top face, scale that. I think I might scale it to 0, actually. I'm not going to merge it yet because as long as it's not merged, I still have the ability to cut edges. And so I'm Control R, cutting a new edge. And let's see here. I might just cut one new edge. Maybe, okay, I'm going to cut several, but for now I'm going to start small. I'm going to cut 2 edges and then better define the profile. All right, I'm going to kind of move them up, Alt-S to push them out. Okay, so now we've got a better profile. And then I can cut a few more edges in here. All right, now this is going to be enough to bend our trunk. And the way I'm going to do that is let's see, in object mode, Shift-S brings up our snap menu. We're going to snap our cursor to the selection. All right, it's going to put it at our object origin. And then I can tab into edit mode and select our top verts, which also can be merged, by the way. So in wireframe, B box select those verts, merge vertice by distance. And then I can enable proportional editing right here, or with the O hotkey. And I like to use connected only by default, so that's just kind of my behavior. I don't think it really matters here. We're going to use the pivot of the 3D cursor that we set at the bottom. And this way we can rotate a branch. But the fall off, this kind of S-curve is not what I want. I want to use the sharp fall off. All right, now this is going to give us a fairly clean bend. Only issue here is that our edges are kind of tilted. I don't think that's a big deal. I'm going to let that ride. And then next, I need to get the actual leaves. So the way we're going to achieve, the fine serrated, I guess serrated is like the word of the stream, but the really fine, like spiky leaves along the branch is we're going to create a simple shape that doesn't take into account the cuts, and then we will add the cuts in a texture. So I can simply grab the curvature of this branch. All right, Shift D to duplicate it, and then E to extrude. Turn off proportional editing and use the median point as my pivot, and start to shape this leaf. Kind of round it over on the ends. Give it a little bit more thickness in the middle. There we go. And now I want to duplicate this over. If I use my view right here, I essentially want to duplicate it straight over in that direction, but it doesn't really align to any axes of the world. If I was thinking a little, better, if I was thinking more in the future, I would have done that. That's okay. We can use the view angle. Let me remove those annotations. We can use the view angle as our coordinates. All right, so orientations rather. So in global, instead of using global, which is the global red for the x-axis, y for the green green axis, green for the y-axis, and global, I can use view and then scale my duplicate. Well, let's duplicate it first. Now I'm scaling in X exactly horizontal according to my screen, my view, which is perfect. -1. Now I've scaled it that direction. And we might just need to do a tiny bit of cleanup. Let's see, did I never merge those? Let me hide everything but that middle spine. Okay, I did merge those. There we go. Excellent. So we've got this leaf started. And let me check my normals. Since I did scale those negatively, I might have a bit of a normal issue, like inverted normals. So the way you can check your normals is in the viewport overlay face orientation. All right, so I want blue to be faced on the outside. Would the bend tool do the same thing? The bend modifier would definitely bend our tree branch, a little more cleanly. I just didn't want to go through the process of setting it up, establishing an origin, like an origin point. But is there a bend tool that's not the modifier? Use custom transforms. So I've not used custom transforms yet. I understand the concept, but I guess I've worked without that for so long that I don't use custom transforms yet. It seems like it's like an advanced technique that I haven't even adopted. So I've still got to learn about custom transforms. All right, so this red leaf is faced the wrong direction. I want to shift in after selecting it, move it correctly. So now we've got correct orientations. We've got a branch that we can now duplicate around. So you'll find with me when it comes to duplication, I like to use this rule of 3 where I need 3 variants to break the illusion of, or break the obviousness of the repetition. So I've got one branch that's kind of my default. I'm going to duplicate it now, kind of rotate it, and then modify this one so that it has maybe a harsher curve. So let's right click. Whoops, I'm sorry. I want to place my cursor, shift right click, places my cursor at, so I can use it as a pivot. And then I can rotate this down for a harsher curve. Maybe even these guys out a bit. And then what should the next one be? I'm going to duplicate my original one. Median point and rotate. Oh, I'm still using view orientations. Let's go back to global. I can rotate this around, and this will be, what's the other version this could be? Maybe it could be twisted. Let's enable proportional editing. And I will turn connected only off for this. So I want all the parts of this mesh to rotate at the same time. Yeah, maybe we can give it like a twist. Nice. What is a custom transform? I honestly... So you have this plus button here, and I think that's where it comes from. Create an orientation from a selection. So you can like, I haven't even played with this yet. I know it's powerful, I just haven't done it yet. But you can something like add the plus button, and so now we've got this specific face. Let's just call it custom orientation A. All right, now when I think it's using the face orientation. I think this is a weird face to do it on, but it's, yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of where you get it. That's where the setting is, but essentially it's like a optimal way to do what I was just kind of had the problem doing. Like I wanted to scale it visually in X, but that didn't align with the global or local orientation. So you create a custom orientation based on a face. I think that's a decent explanation of what it's for. But spiky, okay, yeah, number 9 or spiky, feel free to correct me if I'm not presenting that correctly. You have all these people offering suggestions, and then Omar's like making jokes. I love it. Okay, so we've got the 3 variant. Remember that I use this kind of rule of 3, so I can turn off our face orientation, and this is all I need to like duplicate and build out the canopy of the tree. All right, so let's. And the beauty of this is they're all using the exact same geometry, so they will all share the same UVs and any other object, any other data that we might need to share. So I'm going to select them and smooth them. Just do a test, Control 2. So yeah, these will look pretty good they'll look fine if I decide to smooth them, I think. All right, let's remove that subsurf modifier, Control 0. Now we can duplicate these around, and I'm just going to try and pick from them randomly to avoid the duplication, to avoid the repetitious appearance. So Shift-D, duplicate, and I can rotate, place them further down on the cluster, scale it smaller. Shift-D, duplicate this again. So I'm duplicating the same one a few times and then moving it at different spots. Let's duplicate one of these twisty ones. Also, if you want to snap this to the surface, you can use face snapping. So enable the magnet, enable face, and then project. I like to use project individual elements. The difference being, with that turned off, it snaps. No, it doesn't do that anymore. The way it used to work is you disable project individual elements and it would snap. Oh yeah, there it is. So it's snapping to wherever your mouse cursor is, but when you enable that, it doesn't snap that way. Like it maintains the offset from your cursor to the origin. And that's just a little less jarring in my opinion. Also, I can turn off the magnet icon, and whenever I need to enable it, hold Control during transformation. So move and then hold Control, and it'll start snapping. All right, I'm kind of keeping the ones at the bottom a little bit smaller. Towards the middle and up to the top, they'll get bigger and bigger. And then I can duplicate around the kind of neutral branch. It's definitely, something of a skill to build up over time where you can duplicate and like avoid the pattern that you might find yourself when you duplicate. Basically, learning how to duplicate without making it obvious is kind of the art form. Omar, when you do your freelance, is your workflow Blender centrist, meaning crease, auto smooth, or do you still try and aim to make your models expand to work on their other software? So the project I'm involved with now is the first one that is all Blender. Most of the time I get jobs for generic CG stuff, and I will use Blender, but it doesn't end up in Blender. And so I typically have an idea before the project starts, but yeah, I've always avoided creases for some reason. And maybe it's time for me to stop that. But generally I do try and model with like not being Blender centric. Like I don't know, I kind of do a mix. Maybe I'm evolving over time, but I used to never model based on Blender tools. I would always apply modifiers, make sure that it could exist outside of Blender. When you have a bunch of modifiers controlling your object, it won't export properly. You won't, those modifiers cannot make it to the other 3D package. So I would always try and model that way, but maybe the more I think about answering that, I think over time, maybe I am softening up to that perspective, and I will use Blender specific tools. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting involved in projects that are more Blender related. I still think it's the safer option to not model using that way in case you have to exit Blender. But it's not a massively important point. Hope that makes some sense. Oh my goodness, yeah, question barrage. Why not Alt-D to save on memory? So yeah, I am going to Alt-D duplicates with it being linked. Why am I not doing that now? I don't think I have a reason for why I'm not doing it now. They definitely will share data at some point. But yeah, I don't really have a good reason why I'm not doing that now. Yeah, I don't know. I think if I had to come up with a reason, whenever you link data, you can no longer apply scales, which can get annoying. You have to make them all single users. And sometimes I do like to apply the scale or apply rotation, that kind of thing. So I think that's why I'm not doing it. I don't know. I kind of form these habits and I have to remember, wait, why am I doing this? But Alt-D is great for duplicating with them being linked. Absolutely. All right, I really want to just get these things populated. I'm kind of tired of duplicating them. There were a few more questions, so maybe I'll try and answer those questions while I'm duplicating to speed this up. I want to periodically like zoom out and see, you know, what the coverage is like. It's looking pretty good right now. Maybe I can twist a few more. Whoa. All right, there were a few more questions. Number 9, wouldn't it be better to use Alt-D for this? Okay, same kind of thing. Omar, better yet, why not group instance and save much more on memory? Group instance, is that new to Blender 2.8? The instancing of scene collections. I know that it's possible. I just haven't used it much yet. I really want to like group instancing, but all the group instance origin points being at the center and no longer allowing any modifiers to be used kind of kills it. Okay. So maybe it's best I avoid it until I really know how useful it is. Or what the, have some experience with it. All right. I think that was all for the questions. By the way, if anyone is not aware of like how I'm rotating, so I can just hitting R once will rotate according to my view. Rotating twice, hitting R twice, will kind of do this like trackball kind of rotation. So I'm using both of those as I need them. Wow, there's two twisty ones right beside each other. So let me change that up. Again, still trying to keep in mind how the coverage is over the entire thing. I do want this to look good from all angles because I want the ability to duplicate this around our assembly scene and not worry about it looking better from certain angles. A lot of times when you create a 3D scene, you'll only build it to one camera angle, but for the assets within that assembly, we'll do that with the assembly, but for the assets within, I want to make sure they look good from all angles. So don't neglect the backside, for example. It can be very easy to do. Okay, I think this is a decent amount of coverage, but I won't know for sure. It looks like there's a pretty big bare spot here. I won't know for sure until I get some texture on this, until we see how it all works together. Just fill this bare spot. Okay, I think that looks pretty good for now. Let me save the file. I haven't even saved this yet. Yeah, no, I did. I saved one version. So I'll save over this, Control S, and then File, Save as a new version so that we start that iterative process. Question. This isn't a question, but I would like to thank you and the CG Cookie team for making such a great place to learn. I subscribe to another site like this and it doesn't even come close. Such a great community. Wow, thank you, Zach. Curious, what other site is that, if you don't mind sharing? You don't have to, but I'm curious. All right, so we've got this blocked out essentially. Now we can start to add some textures. And that will better give us an idea of what the true coverage of our branches looks like. Pluralsight is good, but there's no instructor interaction. And I like Udemy too, but I just wait for the sales. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, we've heard a little bit like similar feedback about Pluralsight. We've definitely tried to increase interaction with instructors over the past few years, namely with live streams, also with classes, which are related to live streams. But yeah, it was kind of a renaissance for me in online teaching whenever we started to do streams. I just really like to, I guess, get to know you guys, guys and gals. And that's been a lot of fun for me. So it sounds like that might be mutual, which is awesome. Okay, how are we going to texture this? Let me think about it for a second, because we want to be optimal, right? We don't want to, we want to save as much time as we can. And the easiest way is, since all of these share the exact same mesh data, they'll all share the same UVs. That means we only have to unwrap one branch, the cluster and the trunk. And the trunk and the cluster are basically cylinders, so it'll be pretty easy to unwrap this. Let's try using the workspaces that Blender 2.8 provides us with. Let's go to UV editing. And I will tab into, well, it's already tabbed into edit mode for me. How fancy. And yeah, let me go into local view with the / on the number pad. And I really just need to alt click in edge mode to select an edge, maybe on the bottom side. All right, this runs the length of our cylinder. And I don't need the end. Let me go ahead and delete that. Okay, so here's the thing. If I delete this face, these branches are no longer identical. So maybe it is a good time to share their data. For some reason, I'm wondering, like, if there's a reason that I'm not sharing the data yet. Oh, no, I can't share the data, you know, because we have 3 different variants. Bummer. I wish I had deleted that face earlier on. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's more of an OCD thing, just knowing that there's a face I want to delete, but I won't. So we won't worry about that. But yeah, I can't share data because between all of them, because they're slightly different. So if I share data between the curve, like this twisty one, and the original one, Control L, object data, it no longer has the curve. All right, so maybe that's why I wasn't sharing the data. But they don't have to be sharing data in order to share UVs. Like I can link those manually. From Miranda, Kent, did you know that if you select any face and then press Shift 1, you will look at the front view of that face, and Shift 3 and Shift / etc. You will look at the front view of that face. Shift 1. Interesting. So I did know about Shift 7, not Shift 1, but like Shift 7 will align the view to the normal, I believe, of the face. Shit, what does Shift 1 do? Looks like it's looking at the horizontal direction of so the normal is always gonna, I wonder if I can just show the normals. Just for anyone who doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, so you can show face normals. Let me increase their size a bit. All right, so you can see that a face normal basically just sticks straight out perpendicular to the face, and Shift 7 aligns directly in line with that direction. Shift 1 seems to align. Yeah, you can see that one is perfectly straight. It's aligned to the left, I guess, and then Shift 3 is the other horizontal axis. So those are your 3 axes. That's kind of cool. Very, very useful, definitely. That would also mean that we can, anyway, yeah, that is very cool. Let's turn off the normal visualization. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I'm laying out UVs. So even though the shape of these branches are not exactly the same, the vertex count and vertex order are exactly the same. So that means I just have to unwrap one of these branches. So go to local view, tab into edit mode, ignore the face on the bottom and select an edge loop. I guess this does mean I need to unwrap that, cut some seams. Control E, mark seam. And then that should be all I need to do. Select everything, you unwrap. What is this? Why didn't that unwrap? Does anyone know why that is not unwrapping? Let's see, instead of unwrap, how about we, just to kind of reset this, I'm gonna hit U and then project from view. All right, U unwrap. That thing is not unwrapping. Does anyone know why? I'm a little bit lost why this object is not unwrapping. Mark seam or mark sharp? I mean, mark seam is there. I don't think mark sharp has anything to do with it. This is just not unwrapping. All right, that's the second time I've seen that happen. I've never seen that happen. Did I? Oh wait, I marked it as a. I see what you're saying now. I marked it sharp and not as a seam. Good Lord, I'm a professional. I swear. Believe me, please. Control E, clear sharp. No, I shouldn't have done that. Let me undo where it still is sharp. I'm sorry. Control, I'm going to select one of the sharp edges. Control E, let me start over. I'm trying to go too fast. Select one of the sharp edges. Shift L maybe? Nope. Shift G, select similar. And I want all of the sharpness. Yeah, okay, there we go. Now I've selected only my sharp edges. Control E, clear sharp. Control E, mark seam. Good gracious. All right, now we've got good unwrap. Save, save, save. Thank you. The save police here comes in handy tremendously. All right, so we've saved that out. Excellent. Now we've got some good clean UVs, and we can confirm this if we go to our view, overlays, stretching, and specifically area stretching. So everything is almost entirely blue. There's a little bit of greenish teal up towards the tip of the spine, but the spine is not that important. It's not very visible. So let's orient these a little bit so that I can maximize our texture, our texel density. I'm gonna select this and move it off because it's not that important. So I'm just gonna place this wherever it can fit after I maximize the size of our leaves. All right, so I'm gonna scale these up. Maybe move them apart a little bit more. Make sure they still fit in this space. And then I'll put the spine. Oh, what am I doing? This is only the branch. We got other objects to UV, so there's no need to do that quite yet. All right, let's continue UVing our other objects, which we can do all together. I think this is the one with the, yeah. All right, so with these are the essential objects I need to UV. So tab into edit mode and we can do all three of them at the same time. That's a nice new perk of Blender 2.8. tabbing into edit mode on multiple objects. So let's unwrap this guy. I think what I'll do, let me turn off our sharp visibility. So in our, what are these called? Viewport overlays, turn off sharp. And I just want to focus on, let's see here. It is essentially a cylinder. So can I just cut one edge like that? Control E, mark seam, U unwrap. That's not particularly good. Let's do it a different way. I'm just going to cut it in sections. Control E, mark seam. And then I will probably have to cut one down the middle. Control E, mark seam. All right, let's see how this does. U unwrap. That does seem better. I'm not sure what the green is about. Maybe it's the method, conformal. Let's change it to angle based. There we go, much cleaner, much closer to blue. In case this is the first time you're seeing it, blue means the least amount of stretching and red means the most amount of stretching, the worst kind of stretching. So, you know, green, from blue to green to yellow to orange to red is gradually getting worse in terms of stretching. So you want it to be as close to blue when you unwrap it as possible. The leaves are mirrored across. Couldn't you just stack them on top of each other? Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I did do that in the research, but I have not done that here. So thank you for that reminder. Yes, I am going to do that. So what you're talking about is, since these are duplicate, like mirror leaves, I'm going to use the same UVs for both of them and even further optimize. That's a great suggestion from number 9. So let me select those, and I'm just going to move. They should move right on top of each other. But if they're not, I can just move and snap. If I change snapping to be vertex. Excellent. Now it's just one portion of the texture that will texture both sides. That is a good optimization. This is much cleaner. Now for the trunk, I guess I'll do the same sort of thing, just cut into segments. That way I don't have one really long UV island, and then I cut up the middle, Control E, mark seam. I think I need to cut along this as well. Let me go to local view on just the trunk. Yeah, I need to cut this seam. But since it's triangles, it has a hard time selecting edge loops. It's actually, I think I might have to go one by one. Control E, mark seam. There we go. U unwrap. Excellent. Very clean. I like that. All right, so leave local view. Let's go back to selecting. These are the objects I believe that all have UVs. Perfect. All right, now tabbing into edit mode, I can select all our UVs and hit UV average island scale. All right. And then why are my leaves bright red? I can't remember why that would be the case. Is it because they're reversed? What if I scale? No. Let's see. I might need to see a texture grid to make sure that there's not an error with that. I can't remember why that wouldn't be blue, because it's a very clean unwrap. Question from Omar: would you say the live streaming pressure steals 40% of one's brain power, while when you're modeling alone you have 100% of focus? Yes. Yes, I wish it wasn't so obvious, but I definitely feel like I'm bumbling around. But even it's not that I don't bumble around when I'm on my own. There's plenty of problems solving going on, but like, yeah, there's no pressure to maybe look like you know what you're talking about. So you just put music on and start working. But if it looks like I am bumbling, it definitely feels that way too. Hey, Gonzo's in here. Mr. Jonathan Gonzalez, our Unity instructor. Um, oh, okay. That is bizarre. Look at that. So that must have been why it was red, because I didn't have the other part of the branch selected. Now when I have that selected, we're blue again. UV average island scale with everything selected. There we go. All right, now we're all blue. And remember, I do not want to lose the fact that these verts are, they actually got a little misaligned. Huh, not sure how that happened. What I'm going to do is pack these objects first. No, I think I'm going to have to pack with the leaf as well, and then just reposition the mirrored verts over top of it. Kind of lame. But I'm going to select one of the leaves, select everything else, and then the UV menu, and pack islands. And then maybe play around with the margin. There we go. I'm just going for quick and dirty, honestly. Trying to find a good value. I think that's pretty good. Makes the least amount, it wastes the least amount of space. I'm going to leave it like that. And then this leaf, I will position over top of this one more time. Do you guys? But luckily this is a small, like it's a simple low res mesh. So this just is a quick kind of fix. All right. All right, I think we are good to go now. Your tongue game is strong while you're, oh gosh, what am I doing with my tongue? Well, I have no clue what I would be doing with my tongue. Gonzo has the less lag recording. Oh man, you know what? I'll bet I did. I'll bet I still am using the default YouTube latency. Is it like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, something like that? Man, I don't need to keep clicking that. File save. Thank you for the save, police. I'm going to Shift Control S space add 1 increment. So now we're up to version 3. I think someone did change that for me. Let's see, stream options. Yeah, it's back to normal latency. I'm able to stream at ultra low latency. I just need to remember to set that next time. Sorry about the delay. All right. Apparently I do strange things with my tongue while I'm concentrating. Okay, so we got our UVs laid out. Now we're ready to start painting. But first, let me share UVs between all of the branches. All right, so tab out of edit mode. Just select our branch objects. Make sure that the UV'd branch is selected as the active object, that brighter orange color. Control L, transfer UV maps. What? And I got an error. Let me switch this to the info. Cylinder 11 has 178 loops for 46 faces and expected 148. Are these not the same verts anymore? All right, that one was fine. One of the branches is wrong. Oh. Why is this part of that mesh? Oh, it must be a linked duplicate. Yeah, it's sharing 2 users. Okay, let's try that again. Control L, transfer UV maps. What is cylinder 11? What's wrong with you, cylinder 11? Fine, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm just deleting you. Oh, I did notice just now my tongue was out. I'm super self-conscious about my tongue game. Transfer UV maps. There we go. Now all of them share the exact same UVs. Perfect. We can start painting this finally. Let's get rid of that info. And I'll save the scene. This will be the last version with just the model. So Shift, Control S. Let's iterate up one more time. And this will be the beginning of the texture painting. Yeah, I'm not sure what was up with cylinder 11. It was causing trouble. It was the rebellious one. All right, so we can use one texture since we placed all of those UVs on one atlas, one UV space. We can use one texture for everything. So I'm going to create a new texture. First, though, I want to pull down. I'm still using the UV editing. I don't think texture paint really does a lot. I don't really know why it's separate. But I would just combine these in UV texture / UV editing / texture paint. But I'm going to just stay at UV editing and switch the bottom, add a bottom viewport and switch it to the shader editor. This is how I like to work with Blender 2.8 whenever I'm texture painting. You got your 3D view, your 2D UV editor, and then your shader view. So I can see all of these and how they inform each other. Right, so I need to add a material. Just select all my objects, create a new material down here, and I'm going to call it palm tree. And Control L in the viewport to make sure that they all share that same material. And then I can add Shift A, texture, image texture, click the new button. And we need to decide on a texture resolution size. I think 2048 will be enough, 2048. And I'll call this palm tree color. I will need an alpha channel. And then for the base color, let's just make it like a gray, basically the bark color, so like a grayish brown. Something like this. Okay. All right, now we can look at that. That's going to be where our texture information is populated. Though before I do that, since it's still a generated texture, let's actually use, in the image option, let's use UV grid. All right, and then switch in the viewport to be look dev. Oh, we need to plug that in. Shift Control. I've got the Node Wrangler tool enabled. If you do not have that enabled, you can go to Preferences. I recommend turning it on and leaving it on if you do any texture painting or node editing, material creation specifically. Look for Node Wrangler. All right, make sure you have that enabled because you can Shift Control click on this, and that shows the raw output of this node as a texture in the viewport. All right, so it looks like all of our squares are actually very, very even, which is great. Perfect. All right, now I can go back to blank, and we have that color that we picked. All right, this is going to be the trunk color. Can I just say I'm impressed with your speed? Simple props tend to take days for me because I never think it's good enough. Well, I mean, I'm being maybe a little less critical of this, so it could be improved. But yeah, I do try and go fast because I'm sure going slow is like watching paint dry with computer graphics. But thank you. Um, we've all been self-conscious about our tongue game. Jeez. All right. So we've got our texture started. I'm going to begin, I guess, with the trunk. Might as well. And let me take a quick look at reference so we can frame our understanding of what these colors should be. I had a really good one up top, I think. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so we've got the brown base color. We want these black spots kind of randomly placed, and then we want streaks of varying brownish grays. Okay, so that's kind of my idea. That's what we're going to roll with. I think I'll start by adding the streaks. Let me first, usually what I like to start with is a gradient, or maybe not start with it, but at some point I'm going to add a gradient. Let's just start with the streaks, make it simple. I'm going to switch to my pen and tablet. So no longer using the mouse. And let's go into local view on this object and then switch to texture paint mode. All right, I'm going to select the color. Oh yeah, right click and show. So I don't know if this is default. I think I'm using pretty much default Blender 2.8, but they have the top bar hidden by default, I think. And to show that, it's literally hidden, and you have to right click on any button, any of the menus, and choose header, show tool settings. All right, now we've got our color accessible and our paint tools. If you don't want to use the top bar, you can use this over here, the active tool and workspace settings. If you click on that, you've got all these settings populated there in a vertical column, whichever you like. I personally have grown to favor the top bar. And I want to select the color, this brown color. Actually, no. We don't need to do that. I was going to just make it a darker version and then make a lighter version, but instead I can just use black and white. So over here in the color palette, also available in the brush menu, black and white. And if I change the mix to be overlay is what I want. When I paint white, it will make it brighter. And when I hold control to make that second slot active, that second color active, it goes darker. All right, so that's going to be great for these like streaks that I was talking about. As far as the fall off, I do want to use the sharp fall off. It makes it just a little bit smoother, a little bit softer of a stroke. Though maybe I can increase that even more. There we go. All right, so that's my brush setup. We've got overlay. I want to make sure that the radius and the strength are set to pressure sensitivity on my tablet. And then I can start, making strokes back and forth, just randomly picking whether to use white or black. Oh, but by default, in the fall off section, we've got this normal fall off enabled. I want to turn that off. And I also want to turn off under options. By the way, you can click and drag this menu by middle mouse clicking and dragging. And options, I want to turn off occlude and cull. Now to revert back to before we painted, I can just, if I go to the in panel under the image, you can choose discard the image paint that you've already done. And now we go back to that solid color. And now with those settings turned off, the occlude and culling especially, when I paint a stroke, it goes all the way through the mesh to the other side. All right, I don't want that harsh fall off. Before it was like airbrushing, and of course you're not going to airbrush the back side. The paint's gonna spread and miss that. It's just occluded. And so now I've turned that off since we're working with computers and can do non-real life stuff. And I can just start painting these streaks, and it will go all the way to the other side. All right, so this isn't rocket science. We're just painting streaks. I do want to, orbit around the object so that I'm painting streaks at different angles. just to keep it somewhat random and varied. But yeah, we're approximating the detail. You know, we're not being super detail oriented about this. We're just based on the reference image, approximating it essentially. So let me finish up these streaks. It might not look like much, but once we apply it to the material, it will look pretty good, I think. Might be easier just to like do a whole row of dark streaks. Yeah, that's much faster. It's kind of fun to see it populated in the 2D version. And then go back over with some light streaks. Now I'm not holding control. There we go. I should have done that from the beginning. That was much more efficient. And perfect. All right, so after that, I do want to add some gradients. I love gradients. If you've ever heard me talk about texture painting, I always try to include gradients whenever I can. And the fill brush has a gradient option. I think also the regular brush does too, though I want to use it as a fill. So go to fill, and then I'm kind of bouncing between both of these settings in different, these are literally duplicated settings in different places. All right, I can enable gradient, and black to white is going to be what I want, because again, I will use the overlay option. All right, so first what I'm going to do, I'm going to go segment by segment and do a gradient from dark to light all the way up, and then do one big gradient, one global gradient from bottom to top. Oh, we've got some questions. You might want to make sure the mapping is connected to the UVs. For some reason, even though I had UV maps, it was using generated UVs behind the scenes. Okay, so with an image texture, by default, if you don't have any vector information, any UV texture coordinate information coming in, it should use your UVs, whatever UVs are part of the object. If you use a procedural texture, it will use generated. But to your point, to make sure, we can, since I've got Node Wrangler enabled, we can hit Control T, and that will provide our texture coordinates. And we have UVs plugged into a mapping node, which is just there as an option. I don't really need it yet. Maybe not at all, actually. So let's just get rid of it. So now we've got explicit UVs going into our texture. I think that's a good idea. You know, it's safe to make sure, like number 9 was saying, make sure you've got that explicitly set up. Laszlo question, how do you handle seams? I tried texture painting once, and even though I only painted black and white, it was extremely jittery and weird looking, and the UV map was fine. To put it more generally, how to paint over seams without having the lines cut in between. Yeah, so I did forget something. That brings up a great point. By default, whenever we paint in Blender, if we go over to options, we have this bleed option set to 2 pixels. Now, in my experience, that is far too low. The bleed, if we zoom in, it's how much paint just barely bleeds over the surface of the border of the UV island, right? So we can see that here, and it's stair-stepped because it's a very small value. So to be completely honest, we might have an error where we see the UVs show up, like the seams show up. I really should have changed this to like 10 pixels. That's my standard default. And then when you paint, it's going to bleed over much more, and that's how you avoid the seams showing up in your final result. So I don't know. I could just go ahead and make those strokes again, but anyway, that's a lesson. You should definitely do that. I hate when I forget that. It's so inconsistent in Blender. The bleed value is set to 2, but when you bake a texture, it's set to like 16. So I wish those were like consistent at 10. But every time I reset my Blender to default for the sake of like tutorials or streaming, it resets those. So anyway, off topic, but now that Tim isn't involved as much in the concept part of the site, is the concept part of the site going to be getting any more love in the future? You know, we leave it there because we see people use it. And at various times in the past, since Tim has left, like we'll get a random tutorial posted. It's pretty infrequent. But right now we don't have the resources to like hire a concept person, nor do we have a ton of people looking at that stuff. So it's kind of in this limbo period. There is this desire at CG Cookie to like simplify and streamline, namely toward Blender stuff, and make that the focus. But I don't know. We're talking that stuff over. Like, do we want to continue to pursue concept or not? We're not exactly sure. We don't put a ton of effort into it. We just leave what's there because also the good thing about concept education is it doesn't really age it ages gracefully compared to Blender. The software updates so frequently that stuff is outdated. Tutorials are outdated very quickly. Concept painting doesn't really get outdated. Like the techniques of painting have been around for centuries. Photoshop hardly ever changes. So that's why it also can exist. We feel like it's valuable how it is now without getting new stuff necessarily. So anyway, that was kind of an explanation. That's where we're at with the concept stuff. But if you guys make noise about it, if our members make noise like, hey, where's more concept stuff? Where's more concept? We do listen to that stuff. So in the thread, let me show you where that is real quick. For anyone who doesn't already know this, if we go to cgcookie.com, community forum, we have this thread tagged to the top, suggestion for new courses. And this is pretty active. So if you have any ideas, if you want more concept stuff, put your suggestions in there and people will, like, we get to gauge like how popular that idea is by how many people love it, do the heart situation. So I think if we look at page 1, obviously these have been around the longest. So you got 14 loves here. So this wants to be done. Anyway, we pay attention to this. So this is a great place to suggest courses, including concept stuff. Save, save, save. Oh yeah, that brings up a good point. Since we started texture painting, we have to save the texture in addition to the Blender file. So I can save my Blender file just fine, but the image, the texture itself is not saved. So I need to go to image, save as, let's add it to that texture folder. And palm tree color, RGBA, we do want to maintain the alpha for the leaves. That's coming soon. Save as image. Holy cow, it's 3:42 already. One thing for sure, if I was doing this on my own, like, and not having to teach it, this would go by much faster. So if you're watching this thinking, wow, this is a slow process, it doesn't have to be this slow. Man, I'm going to try, and I really thought I could finish a tree in 2 hours. This might take longer than 3 weeks, but I'll do my best. All right, so save the texture. We save the Blender file. What was I talking about? The gradients, that's right. For the gradients, what I'm going to do is tab into edit mode, and I'm going to hit the L key to hover over a vertex and hit L. And then you have this option for select linked where you can limit the selection by the UV seam. So if I click seam, it only selects that first segment, and then so on and so forth as we go up. And you can use your selection as a mask for when you paint. So let's deselect everything. L to select the bottom segment, go back to texture paint mode, and then in the right beside the texture paint mode selection, you can choose paint mask. And this uses your selection to mask what you paint. So if I enable that, you can see that the bottom is highlighted. This means it will accept paint where nothing else will. So I can do that gradient that I was talking about. Make sure it's white to black, perfect. And if I go to a front view, click and drag, you get this line, and this represents the scope of the gradient, starting at black and going to white. So if we turn off our overlays, you can see what that did before and after. It's darker at the bottom and brighter at the top. Although I don't know about that overlay. That looked kind of like it deadened the color a little bit. Okay, I think that's going to be good. I switched to soft light just for a slightly more subtle effect. All right, now I will turn back on overlays. And then you can also select your mesh from within texture paint mode. You don't have to jump to edit mode. But I can hit A twice to deselect and then hover over the next segment, hit L, paint a gradient, deselect L, gradient, L, gradient, all the way up. Since remember we have occlude turned off, there we go. Now you can see this slight gradient between each segment. And I was saying that the occlude is turned off so that our fill brush fills from front to back, the whole thing. And once I do each segment individually, I'll come back and do the entire thing. Let's turn off mask selection. And then I can do a gradient from top to bottom for the whole thing. Maybe do it a couple times. All right, so these types of gradients I highly recommend in your painting workflow. Gradients just make for much more appealing color situations. It's also true for rendering. Lighting that has a lot of gradients is going to be more appealing lighting. Excellent. All right, so this is the trunk painted. I think we can be happy with that. Let's save our image. Also notice that the bleed value is extending beyond our texture our UV island much further, thanks to that bleed value up to 10. Let's save our file, also save our texture. At this point, we're really not changing anything about the scene itself. So like it doesn't really matter to save the scene, but might as well get in the habit of doing both. And I do want to, in the last 10-15 minutes, I think I will focus on painting the branch, because that is probably the most interesting part of the texture painting process for this particular asset. So let's leave local view, select our tree branches. Oh, we just really need to select one. Let's use our standard one right here. You can't tell that I selected it, but just trust me that, well, no, I guess I didn't. Now it's selected, and we can leave it in local view. We can go to local view and leave everything else out. All right, so the same situation. I'm going to fill this with a gradient again. Texture paint mode, I'm going to switch to a mixture this time so that it's a pure, the colors of the gradient that I select are what's going to go on to the branch. I'm not going to use an overlay or soft light. And the gradient's going to start at a dark green. Very saturated too, right? I'm going to keep my colors very, very saturated so that it, that kind of caters to that stylistic, appealing aesthetic. And then the top end of the spectrum is going to be a bright green, bright sort of lime green. Maybe the dark color, the dark color can be more toward the blue spectrum. There we go. Let's start with that. Oh, geez. I didn't put... Okay, so now it's confusing because these are my color swatches, but that is not the gradient. I get confused in that sometimes. I'll select the lower flag, copy that dark color. I just hover over the color, Control-C, hover over the other one, Control-V to paste it. And then select the light flag, Control-Copy, Control-Paste. All right, now I can paint... Oh, okay, so since our UVs are on top of each other, I need to mask out one of the leaf halves. Let's, in edit mode, I'll select everything and then Shift L to deselect one half. All right, and then I can enable selection masking. And if I want to enable selection masking, but I don't want to look at this sometimes obnoxious white outline, white wireframe, you can enable selection masking and then turn off your overlays. And then you can paint a little more naturally. Oh, we have a problem though. I switched around the mesh. All right, so I want the gradient to be dark at the bottom and light at the top, but that's just switched around here. I am a silly person. Let me try this again. Tab into edit mode, turn back on our overlays. And I need to switch this around. So let me scale in Y. Select everything, scale in Y, -1. All right, and then bring back the other half. Snap it. How many times have I snapped these verts today? I'm so thankful it wasn't a more complex mesh because that can get annoying very fast. All right, there we go. Now our gradient is consistent. Back to texture paint mode. I need to mask off our selection again. I can just select this leaf and then Control I to invert the selection. Always more than one way to skin a cat inside Blender. And I think I want to make that gradient a little more prominent. Oh, so the strength was at 0.5. I should just have made it 1. There we go. All right, so now we have this nice bright leaf. I might paint a little bit of yellow, like yellow accents. Instead of overlay, let's just do mix, but then make the strength of the brush pretty light. And then the very top, I guess what I really should have done for the gradient itself is just add another flag, control clicking, and then making this that yellow color. That would have been a little more efficient way to do it. There we go. All right, now we're ready to paint the alpha map. That, I think, is a fun part. Any more questions? No. Cool. I'm going to switch to my tablet once again. Let's go ahead and save the image. And for painting the alpha, it might also help. So right now I'm orbiting around our 3D view using the default turntable method, but we can go to Edit Preferences, and under Navigation, we can change the orbit method to be trackball. And now I can orbit kind of any way that I want, like a free-form type orbit. And this will be nice for texture painting. And yeah, so painting the alpha, I want to switch to the brush, and then for the blend mode, I want to choose Erase Alpha. And then for the color, I believe this is best if it's at white, pure white. All right, now I paint a stroke and nothing happens. Partly because my strength is super low. Let's turn that all the way up. Turn off pin pressure sensitivity. That way I know my stroke is going to be at 1. All right, and now we start to get some alpha. We can really see it in the texture. You can see that checker behind. So I'm starting to paint the alpha, but the fall off type is not ideal. Let's go to the standard smooth fall off. All right, that's going to be more what I want. I want the strength all the way up. Okay, so we see in the 2D editor that there is alpha distinctly, but in the material we have to tell it how to be an alpha. And the way you do that is go to the material properties. Under the settings, you've got your blend mode, and that's set to opaque, which means no alpha transparency. You need to switch that to be, I'm going to use alpha clip in this example. And oh, that's right. So we don't see that. That's one of the things you need to do. But also you need to tell the material to be to have transparency as well. Right now it does not. So I need to plug this into the alpha slot, the alpha socket of our principled BSDF that comes with the material by default. Then Shift Control click on that. That plugs our principled BSDF in the material output. And now you can see that we have alpha, and you can even see on the other side. So then plug in the color into the base color. And now we've got an idea of what our material is going to look like. We can, while I'm at it, I might as well change the roughness of the specularity down so that that looks a little better. Anyway, that's really not something I want to deal with right now. Let's continue painting these streaks so that our palm branch, I just realized, where's the other half of the branch? What happened to the other half? Is it hidden? Alt-H. Oh, I have that enabled. Okay, so I guess... No, what's going on here? Why is half of the branch missing? If anybody's got an idea, the other ones have a blank alpha channel, I'm guessing. It would be a lot of fun if it was just working right now. Why is that not working? Okay, let me... Yeah, I'm confused. It's almost like there's an alpha being used, but... All right, no, so this is the alpha channel. Oh, I'll bet that's what it is. I'll bet it's this. The texture paint opacity is probably the issue. Let me turn that all the way down. Nope, that's not the issue. People. What is this? Well, okay, maybe if I save the image and then reload it. Ah, what a terrible way to end the stream. Yeah, I'm not sure what is happening. What if I do this manually with a shader? Let's add a diffuse BSDF and then a shader transparent BSDF, shader mix shader. I think I got these in the wrong order. Alpha clip. What if we switch the alpha up? Okay, so the changing the blend mode did something for us. Show back face. All right, there must be, I wonder if there's just a slight bit of gray on the bottom. All right, let me try and fix this real quick. I'm going to switch my color for my fill brush to be white. And let's go to the mix type, add alpha. Okay, I'm filling the alpha with white, the alpha channel with white. What is happening? Oh. Omar, you said, does it take 40% of your brain? It takes more than that, I think. I'm a fool. I was using the color information as the alpha. So it was using a gradient, the gradient from this. Guys, y'all should just leave and never listen to me again. Alpha clip. Plug this back up. I can attest this does happen even when I'm not streaming. These kind of like just silly things you forget. But let's be honest, this stuff is super complex. There's so many settings in Blender. There's so many things to be aware of. It's very easy. Not making excuses for me. I should have been on this, but for all of us, like it's very easy to make simple, silly mistakes like this. Okay. Now I can go back to painting and hopefully get this looking like a palm tree before we leave. All right, I want to go back to erase alpha. And yeah, it should be as simple as that. Make sure that my mask is still working. All right, perfect. Yeah, let's just start painting. There we go. If you want it to be smooth, you know, you don't want those jitters in there. Actually, maybe it's better to come from the other side. Instead of start from the middle and work out, I'll start from the outside and kind of just cut it in like that. Make a quick stroke. I like how it's decreasing in size as I release sensitivity, pressure sensitivity. But I don't want that to be too obvious. You know, when we get that kind of There we go. And yeah, like I'm focusing on some big ones at first. I just released the pressure so quickly. And then I can come back with some smaller ones. There we go. All right, that's looking okay. Awesome. All right, now the big reveal. Let's see how that looks on everything. Ta-da! Just like that, we've got a tree. That worked out fairly well. Let's see what it looks like smoothed. Control 1. And yeah, that still works out being smoothed as well. All right. That's been 2 hours, and that's pretty much all of it. I just need to do the same treatment to the this, what do you call it? The cluster from which the branches grow out of. I need to apply the same treatment that I did down here. Let's be sure to save our image, save our texture. Excellent. Man, I went so slow today. I mean, 2 hours for this is that's kind of wild. I didn't even get to create the rest of the material. So yeah, this might be a longer stream series than I initially anticipated, but we'll see how it goes. You know, I'll try and maybe speed up. You know, maybe try not to treat it so beginnery, but like I tried to explain every single thing that I was doing today. Maybe I'll cut that back a little bit and try and just do more of the work and make progress a little more quickly. Cool, yeah. So we save the file, and then I'll pick this up next week. We can easily create a fern from the branches that we've already created, so that'll be easy. A rock. Surely in the next stream I can do a rock and a fern, and then maybe a leafy bush, like a leafy mid-sized tree. Anyway, all right, I'll let you guys go. We'll pick this up next week. Make sure my texture and my file are saved. And yeah, so someone asked, when are these made available? Usually 20, I try for 24 hours. It takes a little while for the YouTube recording to be available for download. And then I turn around and cut out like the 10-minute countdown, and I'll definitely cut out where I had to restart the computer, and you'll get that within 24 hours typically. So I'll let you guys go. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the technical difficulties towards the beginning. Hopefully we'll be free from those next time. But yeah, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Happy blendering.